Are you exhausted from carrying it all and realizing something has to change? What if 4 days could give you the clarity and breakthrough that normally takes 6 months of counseling? The Soul Care Intensive program is open to anyone ready to do deep, focused work. In just 4 days, you'll complete comprehensive assessments, receive 8 hours of therapy, a follow-up report of the sessions, tools, and aftercare options, all in a distraction-free environment built for real change. This experience is especially powerful for couples working through marital strain, communication breakdowns, or years of unresolved tension. If you're tired of surviving and ready to get unstuck, don't wait. Check out emerge.org/intensives today. A Soul Care Intensive is for you when waiting is no longer working, because staying the same is no longer an option.
It's the XM Podcast with licensed mental health therapist Matthew Kanabe.
Well, welcome back to the XM Podcast. Today's conversation is one every parent needs to hear. Whether you're raising toddlers, teenagers, or somewhere in between, parenting can feel both deeply rewarding and incredibly overwhelming. In this episode, I'm joined by a colleague who brings both professional insight and practical wisdom from a therapist's perspective. Together, we're diving into the heart of parenting and how to truly connect and communicate with our kids. Because at the end of the day, healthy parenting isn't about creating perfect kids, but it's about building trust, safety, wisdom, and connection over time, and then prayerfully towards salvation. So grab a notebook, take a deep breath, and join us for this important discussion. Please welcome my guest, Alexa Riemenschneider.
How you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I've been looking forward to this because I think it's great. I love the fact that I get to spend time with people who've been through life experiences and people who are overcoming different issues. But I also love talking to my colleagues. Mm-hmm. And, what I would say is somebody who's a professional and just really grateful that we're going to have this conversation.
Me too. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
I am too. So, Alexa, share with our audience a little bit about you and let them kind of get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a licensed professional counselor with a passion to help people of all ages, as young as little 4-year-olds to really just any age. I mainly work with children, adolescents, young adults, as well as adults, parents, families, but outside of work, I'm in wedding planning season.
Yes, you are.
Yes, and it is a wonderful and stressful experience.
It is, yeah.
And I really appreciate being in a space where I can recognize, obviously my own emotions as a mental health counselor. So I'm in this whole journey we call life right now. I am in the thick of, mid-20s
mm-hmm.
and just figuring it out like everybody else.
Yeah. Well, you are definitely one of the people, and we have an amazing team here at Emerge, but you are one of those young therapists that we're super excited about, and just seeing you grow and just become a great therapist. So what got you into therapy? And, as you said, because I kind of did the same thing coming to Emerge years ago. Majority of the population I was working with was children, adolescents, young adults. Mm-hmm. In by working with that population, you're working with parents mm-hmm, too.
Yeah.
So anytime you got a young one coming in, yep. You're not just working with that. So what was a little bit about your journey into working with that population and some of your interest in getting into mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was younger, I struggled a lot with anxiety and OCD, and I grew up also with ADHD, so a bunch of things. And I think my parents never really understood why. I had an amazing childhood, right? And it was still, we're giving her the support, but there's just not something that's clicking. And so having my own supports, counselors and just people who really understood that we don't always have the answers, right? Especially for a kid. Like, why is an innocent little kid struggling, you know what I mean? And even when I was younger, there were times where I felt that my counselors had no idea what I was going through. They were just like, oh, just take a deep breath. It's okay. Like, no, that's not how it works.
Right.
So I think really my passion for kids is being able to say, I get it, and this is more than just saying, you got to listen to your parents, and that's just how it goes, right? You really got to open them up, because kids are very smart. They pick up on a lot more than we think. And so I always say I'm a child at heart, so I feel that being able to get into a kid's world and, whether that mean playing games with them, doing whatever, it's just allowing them to feel safe in that way and feel understood is very important to me. As far as even just the whole mental health thing, I believe that was a God thing. I originally went to college for speech pathology, and right when I was told I could do a build your own major for it, and so I did, and then I got accepted to the school, and then they're like, just kidding, we can't do that.
Oh, wow.
And so I said, okay, I guess psychology is interesting, right? And that's, since then, has been really, I just have such a passion for learning about why do we think the way we do? Why do we do what we do? And more importantly, watching my parents struggle with my brother, who has a very more severe mental health condition, where, he's 5 years older than me, and it's still like they're taking care of, it seems like a younger kid with his mental state.
Yeah.
So my passion really lies in with, I guess, understanding the whys, the hows, but also just how do I help the family? How do I help the family system? Because I've watched my parents struggle for years, and trying to grasp that sometimes we don't have the answers. Yeah. Right? We just have to help, whether it's your kid or your family member, in the best way that you can. And also taking care of yourself and making sure that you and your partner are on the same wavelength, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I definitely want to get into some of that. I think, what are some of your perspectives on a new family coming in with let's say an adolescent or a young one, that are just trying to navigate the mental health thing? Like, what are some of the first things that you share with parents, or things that you've learned to kind of help with the acceptance? Because as you and I talked earlier, the denial piece, that maybe there's not anything there, or they don't have depression, or they don't have anxiety, becomes a little bit of a hill that we've got to navigate. And us as therapists, we have to do that in a empathetic, caring, loving, non-judgmental way. But sometimes there is mental health issues there. And what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, 100%. Well, I always tell parents there is not one right parenting model to follow. You are just kind of going into this blindly. No matter how many kids you have, it's like a different recipe for each one, right? And so kind of how I approach, parents is, yes, the client or the kid is my client, but I'm here for you. I'm here to hear you. And the family system really impacts, a child's functioning, right? And so we need to all make sure that we are our best self. And as far as the what you said about navigating acceptance, like sometimes it is hard to accept that our kids have, anxiety or depression or whatever it is, because we want to provide them the best life possible, and we, parents, we want to think that we do the best job, and you do great, but also sometimes it happens out of left field. Yeah. And you feel stuck.
Well, I think what you had mentioned earlier, and I've shared this many times before. I mean, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for a massive anxiety disorder and a panic disorder. And, I've shared many times, I'm now working in the office that I was a client in 2010. And I'm grateful for it. But also similar to you, I came from a great childhood. I have great parents. So how do we explain those things? Because it sounds like you had a somewhat of a similar journey and going, I had a good home, but I was dealing with OCD. I was dealing with anxiety. I think sometimes for parents, one, they carry a lot of guilt, blame, and shame for that. But the other thing is, it's not always, I agree, the system is imperative, but it's not always because it's a maladaptive or abusive situation that kids have problems.
Right. 100%. And that's a really, really big point that I like to drive home. And like we were saying, the first thing really just comes with acceptance, right? Parents don't have all of the answers to everything. Why is my kid having these, let's say, intrusive thoughts? Where do they learn them from? And how can I best help with that? And that's great, but also making sure that you realize, like I said, kids are very smart. Sometimes that also means taking a step back and looking at what are you modeling for your kids? Right? Yeah. How are you handling stress? Yeah. And that doesn't mean, oh my gosh, I'm doing a terrible job. I'm doing this or that. No, we're human, right? It's a normal reaction to be stressed. Yeah. But it's the question I always try to, or I guess the point I always try to drive home to parents is we need to regulate our own selves. Yeah. In order to be the best for our kids.
Yeah. The famous quote is, no matter what you think you're teaching or telling your kids, they will learn more from modeling your behavior than anything. I was sharing this with in a session, I think it was this past week, and this kind of concept came up, and I was like, I want you to really think about your childhood, and I want you to really think about, you start coming into real cognition maybe 3, 4, 5. Some people maybe a little bit later, but I can remember when I was 5. I can maybe remember when I was 4, and then I was prompting them to kind of go, what were the conversations that you had with your parents during that time? No idea. Right. What did you feel during that time? Oh, high levels of stress. The memory is, how did I feel about it? What did it make me think or believe about myself? But they couldn't, and I can't really either. Like, I was thinking about doing it to myself. I'm like, I don't really remember the conversations my parents and I had, or the teaching moments, more than they made me feel safe, or they made me feel like the house was a high stress level, or they maybe, whatever that may be. And so that's very telling to me. And so as we're talking to parents, one of the things I share, if you could take your thermostat and if it would measure the level of stress in your home versus the heat or the cold, what does your house say? Ooh. And I think a lot of times they take an inventory of that and they go, oh, our house is pretty high. Yeah. That's what the system is feeding, And so I think those types of things, because, teaching moments are great and they're important, but ultimately those are moments in time versus an overarching, for the last 3 years, our house has been chaotic. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of stress. That will shape your children way more than it will be whatever the conversation they think they're having.
100%. And even off of that, like, how is your child witnessing you and your partner handling it together? Yeah. Does one look at the other with a look of disappointment, or does your voice tone even change? Even voice tone is a big thing, right? And kids, a lot of it is, egocentric. It's me. I'm the reason for this. I'm the reason for that. Oh, I accidentally tripped and I fell on the floor, spilled my water, and now mom's upset, right? Yeah. It's not, like, obviously it's normal to be upset, but it's the emotions, like you're saying, that they really hold on to, right? They're not going to remember what mom said in that moment, but it's how she reacted. Yep. And in those moments, is it fear? Is it stress? Is it anger? Like, what that kind of develops then kind of becomes the posture. And I can see it with my kids. I've got 2 young kids. I can see it immediately. Like,
we had a funny situation happen a couple weeks ago, and we were at dinner, and I don't remember what exactly. My wife ate something, and she just looked at me and she's like, that was terrible. And she was kind of like, she did that. Yeah. Well, the kids saw it and immediately started doing it. And she looked at me, she's like, I'm so sorry. Because I told her, I was like, don't do it. Yep. Don't do it. Yep. But she just had like an adverse reaction because I think there was a bone in something or whatever. But then all of a sudden, both kids started going, I can't eat this. We're 2 minutes before that. They were totally fine doing it. But they model us so much. And so I think one of the other things, Alexa, I think we need to just address, because you have unique families, you have families who are blended, you've got families who are one-parent families, we've got, families with two parents. Are there any differences as far as how we are raising our kids, or things that you would speak into that? Because as we were just talking, I'm like, not everybody listening is going to come from, mom and dad situation, or, we could do a whole podcast on blended families, so we don't have to go completely down that road. But anything that, as a therapist, you would say, kind of going in those situations as a single parent, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, 100%. Sometimes it feels like the weight of the world is on your shoulders. That's what I've gathered, right? And also just there's so much pressure to make sure that your kid grows up and has this, perfect or close to perfect lifestyle. But just like I said before, there is no one way manual on how to parent. And that comes with ups, it comes with downs. But at the end of the day, be careful with how much guilt and shame and even your own triggers come into it, right? Obviously, it's different for different situations, but you have supports that you can use, whether it's, a friend, a family, right? You don't have to do this alone.
We'll be right back.
LPC, LPCC, IMFT, LISW, PhD. If you don't know what any of those are, go ahead and hit the 30-second fast forward button and enjoy the podcast. But if you know someone or happen to have those credentials, then Emerge might be your next career path. If you're seeking to join a team that provides authentic Christian counseling and utilizes advanced modalities, then apply today at emerge.org/careers and join us in the battle to help people find freedom and rest.
I think that's huge. I think I want to touch on a little bit what you had mentioned. For those who have families where there's two parents in the house, that dynamic has got to be navigated in a healthy, careful way, because in that situation, parenting, it is not one person, but the two people aligning in one job, and I think a lot of times that you get 2 steps forward, 1 step back type of situation within parenting. And when I started doing clinical work and working with younger populations, I realized immediately my client is my client, but that is not the only person I'm working with. Right. It was very evident, very quick, that I am also including whoever the primary caregivers are in this. And then sometimes, depending on what the situation is, bringing siblings and everything else in. Talk to me a little bit about your approach with parents and the idea of how they work together or how they work against each other. What are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, 100%. So let's just look at first how they work for each other. In my experience, a lot of times, right, moms, a woman come in and they're obviously, as we know, moms are more nurturing in that way. They're very more emotionally attuned, right? Obviously, they want to problem solve, but when their kid is coming to them crying, they're going to be like, oh, it's okay, come here, let me hug you, that kind of thing, right? Yeah. I've noticed more so dads are like, okay, well, how do we solve the problem? right? So it's really balancing this this emotional versus logical approach, right?
Yep.
And I think that, and what I've seen is parents getting triggered by their own hurts or their own things, even within a marriage or whatever situation it is with the other person. Separating that and learning to maybe put that to the side and focusing on, okay, you know what? Right now, the situation is my child is X, Y, and Z. My child's having anxiety. How can we compromise, or how can we come together as one? And I did ask my parents how they did this with me, yes, but with my brother. My dad gave me a really interesting word of advice, which I see in families all the time. When you raise a girl, right, it's different than when you raise a boy.
Yeah.
And that's just the norm. So I think first and foremost, he said, you want to make sure that you talk beforehand. Like when you find out, okay, this is what's going on, right? They're upset, XYZ. When they're upset, this is how we should handle this, right? Really talking about it before, laying out what your concerns are before, kind of like an action plan. Because when you're in the situation, emotions are high and you might get mad at each other.
Yeah.
Right? And also, I always say this, you want to fight for your partner, not against your partner.
Yeah.
Because what happens when the kid sees, oh, now mom and dad are fighting because of me?
Yeah. Yeah, the kids will learn pretty quickly to utilize that. And that's a dangerous issue with alignment. I think that, some of the stuff I share with parents is if you elevate, kids will match, or your spouse will match. Whatever the stressor is, if you're elevating it and bringing it up a notch, then all we're doing is escalating.
Right.
And so, and I wish I could say, Alexa, I've done this 100 times perfectly out of 100. But that's not the case.
Right.
But I can probably say 95 times out of 100 I do, versus not being cognitive or aware of that. But if I see a situation escalating, I start lowering my voice. I start reducing the stress, because the thing is like once you start doing that, then everybody's triggered.
Right.
Now we're not responding to anything, we're reacting to everything. And all of my clients know I use that phrase all the time. Being a reactor means you are not utilizing any of the skills that God has given you. You're just kind of going, whatever the most natural, human, sinful part of me is going to come out next.
Yeah.
Whereas being a responder is allowing the prefrontal cortex to come back online, taking a pause, allowing that to be that place. I share with people all the time, it's like if you see me pausing for 30 seconds and it's an awkward pause, know what's coming out of my mouth is probably the best thing. Because I'm accessing the Holy Spirit and going, I want to filter through that, not the human part of me that just wants to say whatever it is to get you away from me,
Right.
And so, but that's also modeling, but it's also, for me, that's a spiritual discipline.
Yes.
And that's hard to do.
Yeah, it is.
Especially within family dynamics. But that's what we're called to as parents, is having kids, like, are they supposed to regulate or am I supposed to regulate? Right.
And also a big thing I see with, and I'm going to obviously hit on parents who might be separated as well in co-parenting, but it's just such an interesting thing. Like we said, how much kids pick up on. We might even think the nonverbal cues, right? So what does that look like? Are you rolling your eyes? Are you standing kind of in this position with your arms crossed? And do you have a scowl on your face, right?
Yeah.
We want to make sure that we're creating a safe place for our kids. And while we might physically have that, the nonverbal cues are equally as important, right?
Yeah, for sure. Talk a little bit about that, then, the co-parenting situation, where you've got maybe a divorce situation.
Yeah.
And I know it's tough. Like I've worked with so many clients that are in that situation, and there's usually a lot of other stuff that is brought into that. What has been your experience in working those?
Yeah, 100%. So I work a lot. So whether it's foster systems, adoptions, single parents, separated in the process of divorce, already divorced. One thing that I've noticed is that no matter what, a kid they want to feel loved. And as parents, it's like, well, how do you do that, right? Like, do I give them hugs? Do I tell them they're doing great, right? It comes down to the little things. So first and foremost, how are you reacting with let's just say divorced, parents who are divorced, right? Don't put your child in the middle of it.
100%.
Right? I know that's hard. But that's my best advice because they're already going through so much, right? I've had kids tell me, well, I'm sticking out in class because my parents aren't married or people are making fun of me. And that's nobody's fault.
Right.
Right? And so just ensuring that they know that they are loved on both sides is vital. And that also comes with how do you handle drop off and pick up? Are we not talking to the other person? I get that we have our own emotions, but sometimes we need to put that to the side and just put on our best front to make sure that our kid knows that they're okay, they're safe.
And that's so hard, but so true. Even in a situation, if one of the sides has done something horribly wrong, I'm gonna put out a PSA, and I want people to hear this because it's so important. And this may rub people the wrong way, but I have dealt with this. I know you have dealt with this. Please, if there are parents who are listening that are in a divorce situation, do not weaponize your children or the therapeutic process. It is not beneficial for the kid. It's not helpful for the therapist who's trying to do their job. And what I mean by that is utilizing therapy, putting your kid in a situation where they're being in a tug of war, utilized in ways that are inappropriate, bombarding sessions, bombarding the therapist, not letting the therapist do their job. I mean, all of those things, I know that's hard, and I know there's high emotions, especially because I've done it, I'm sure you have, when you're counseling in the midst of a divorce. And they're trying to figure out custody, and they're trying to do all this stuff, and they want the courts to pick their side. I know it's tough, but as a third party working with their kid, the person who gets hurt the worst in that is the kid. Every time. And I've seen it time and time and time again. And I beg the parents, please stop doing this.
Because I've had kids so many times, and teenagers, tell me, you know what, they might tell me that it's not my fault, but I feel like it is, right? Because we're putting them in the middle of it. And we might not even realize that we're doing it. And, what are some ways that you may be doing that, right? That's a big question. Well, it could look like saying, well, if so-and-so said that they were really mad at you and did it, like every little thing. Kids can complain about their parents, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you have to go all the time, run off to the other party and be like, well, I told you that you're this, right? And also making sure that we're not using the kid as a pawn. Right?
Exactly.
And and as you were speaking on to that, I've heard kids say that they feel that they have to be this mediator between parents, and it's not your kid's job to say, hey, mom wanted me to relay this message for you, right? I know that everybody comes from different backgrounds, and I know that, I don't know what, all of our viewers are going through, but I do know that as a parent, you have a job, right? And that is to take care of your kid. And sometimes, like I said, that means we have to put those feelings in a little box for a second and reach out and just communicate. And even if the other person, sometimes the other party doesn't, but all you can do is try.
It's tough. I think that's why I've never met a person that's gone through a divorce and was like, you know what, that was pretty neat. That went well. Like it's not. It's just 100% of the time it doesn't go well. But I understand. I mean, so many people that I have worked with, have gone through stuff like that. But, what we're talking about and the focus of this podcast is parenting.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is your spouse may not be your spouse for the rest of your life, but your kid is.
Yeah.
So those things, it's like if the marriage isn't there, it doesn't change the fact that both of you are still parents.
Right.
And trying to navigate that can be very, very difficult. So I want to talk about something else because I think it's important, and I want to get your view on discipline. And how do you counsel, coach, encourage, educate parents on discipline? What's appropriate? I'm sure everybody has different styles, but what are some of your thoughts on that?
100%. And I always let it be known that I am not the parent in the situation,
right?
And that I'm not trying to come in and invade how they parent, right? Just I'm really, our job as counselors is to provide you guys with some education on what are really effective ways. The first thing I like to say is positive, just kind of positive affirmations. And what does that mean? Really, when your kid does something and you notice that they did a good job, or they, even if it's a little thing, they packed their lunchbox today, right? Validate that. Say, hey, I noticed that you did that. That was a good job.
Yeah.
Because I've had kids and teens, especially teens, come in and say, well, I'm doing all these things. I'm doing my chores, but I feel underappreciated.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so those little things help build up their character. It helps them, it rewires their brain to help them know that, oh, awesome, I am doing a good job. I am good enough.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah.
And I also think that understanding that your kid wants privacy too, teenagers especially. It doesn't mean that they're hiding from you. It doesn't mean that they're doing X, Y, and Z. It's okay to have boundaries. And so as far as discipline, I've had parents tell me they want to take down their kids' doors to make them talk. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's not beneficial.
That's not beneficial. Actually, the more of these really strict boundaries that you place, I've found in my experience, kids will just continue to get more and more and more guarded.
And rebellious.
Yeah. Because they're trying to find ways to escape.
Exactly.
And get freedom.
Yeah, I think there's an openness that needs to happen. I think you have to know your kid.
Yeah.
If I have a kid that has gotten in trouble, maybe been arrested a couple times, doing illegal things, there's a different type of discipline than maybe somebody who hasn't done that but maybe didn't take the garbage out.
Right.
But I also think, and I agree, I'm going to piggyback on what you were saying, the idea of catching your kid in a good thing is great, but also when they're not doing anything, tell them you're proud of them. Mm-hmm. And, I've done that with my kids, and my 8-year-old would be like, well, you're proud for what? And I'll say, I'm just proud of you. And that, it kind of moves, my hope in, my brain is moving away from, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm worthy because of, like, I got an A on a test. Right. Now I'm proud of you.
Right.
Just letting them know, when they're not. I think catching them in good things is awesome. But also just going, hey, I just want to let you know I love you today. Yeah. Why? Just because I do.
Right.
Then it's not so performative based. But I think with the discipline thing, and you tell me what you think about this, because years ago, when I started working with a lot of different families, I started to recognize patterns. And if you look at the different age groups, if you look at like a 3-year-old versus a 7-year-old versus a 12-year-old versus a 16-year-old, their concepts of forever are different. Mm-hmm. And that helped inform me the length of discipline. So for a 3-year-old, you may say, you're not going to have a sweet treat for a month. That's way too long.
Way too long.
That's beyond forever for them. Right. Forever for them might be a day.
Yeah.
You know, and so if the discipline goes beyond their idea of forever, they get disheartened and then they don't care.
Yep.
And so figuring that out, you know, like maybe a 3-year-old's a couple hours, maybe a 7-year-old's a day, maybe a 12-year-old's a week, maybe a 16-year-old, depending on the situation, might be a couple weeks or a month. But like I've had parents that have taken away, you know, gaming consoles for an entire school year. Mm-hmm. After a couple weeks, that kid has become numb to that, and that discipline doesn't matter anymore. You've just disheartened them. Right. That's it. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. It's reinforcement, right? And right. I really agree with that too. Like when I was 3 years old, if I did something I thought was bad, I would put myself in the corner. Of course I would, right? I would tell on myself. I'd put myself in the corner, and I'd be like, "Oh, go get to the corner." My parents are like, "Okay," and I would always expect them to come back and take me. I mean, it felt like 10 years, but it was really probably like 5 minutes. And sometimes they just would forget because they, you know, I put myself in there anyways.
She's been there for a week. She hasn't even eaten.
Right? And so, you know, and the more I did that, the more I was like, well, this is kind of like pointless. Why am I just standing in a corner? It didn't, you know, the older you get, the more you develop. Then it started going to, you know, well, you're going to go to your room, right? Oh, cool. I get to go to my room and play with my toys and this, and this. So on the topic of discipline, I would sit down with your kid, and ask them, listen, you know, let them know that you're not doing it to intentionally make them upset. You're not doing it because you're mean and this and that. Or even in teenage language, like, you're not doing this because you're trying to control them or make them lose their freedom. Really what you're doing is you're trying to help them understand that actions have consequences. Yes. Right? And so maybe even coming together and saying, okay, if you do something, let's tag team. What would be fair? And because that helps them understand, like, okay, I have a part in this, and I understand if I do X, Y, and Z, I will get my phone taken away. I will get, I won't be able to go to that birthday party, right? And I think that also reduces that shock. Like, I can't believe you're doing this to me. You're the worst parent, like, right? Yep. And then also, it's really hard making sure that parents or whoever is caring for the child, they're on the same team here. Yeah. So many times I'd go to my mom and be like, Mom, Dad said I was grounded. Like, can you talk to him? And that's great and all, but I would abuse that power all the time.
Yeah. And what's it teaching you?
Exactly.
You know, what you're saying, and I appreciate the concept. The point of parenting is, one, we're setting our kids up to be untethered, to go into a world and then create their own guardrails so that they understand, you know, we're all going to go through life adversities and difficulties, but are we aware of the things that we put into motion, what the next 3 or 4 consequences may be if we do that? That's essentially what we're doing. My pastor, he says all the time, he's like, you're not parenting your kids to be happy.
Right.
I hear that from parents all the time. I just want my kid to be happy. Well, you'll be sorely disappointed because happiness is a fleeting emotion that it will come and go. But if you can give them the foundation to build their faith on, and our number one job is to lead them to salvation. Right. If we can do that, and then if you reverse engineer that, start looking at what is an appropriate consequence to this action. And that's us as parents to be able to navigate, to figure out, is this appropriate? If they were out in the world and they made a choice, what would be the response to it? Well, how can we do that in a microcosm that they won't be hurt by? Because the goal is, you know, when they make decisions out on their own, we're trying to protect them from being hurt, ruining their life, ending up in prison, you know, on down the line. Right. You know, so the idea is to, as you and I both know, and that brain development, every time I read a new study, it's like, it used to be like 18, 19. Now it's like 22, 23. Then it's like 25. I think it's like mid-20s now before the prefrontal cortex is completely developed. Yeah. And so what we're doing is we're helping develop that.
Right.
And I think if we keep that in mind, parenting becomes, it's never easy. It's not an easy thing. I'm not going to tell anybody on this planet parenting is easy. But it's something that I think is such a wonderful opportunity and a gift to be able to do. But it is hard. And then you see years down the road, God willing, the fruits of that in these kids who grow up, and we pray that they do well.
Yeah, 100%. And even for those who, maybe it's a single parent situation or divorce, don't try to compete for as far as divorce. I see this kind of like this competition between the parents and and kids will say, well, I like being at dad's house because he has more of this and that. And does that hurt to hear? Sure. But at the end of the day, your job, like you said, is to make sure that your kid is getting the emotional support, the physical support, the spiritual support, and sometimes that means, okay, I might not be able to give them this big thing that they're seeing, but I can give them love. That goes way more than something temporary.
Yeah. It's really good. Any other thoughts for our audience today that maybe we didn't hit on, or any other things that, Alexa, you feel like would be good for us to make sure we get in there?
Yeah, 100%. Really just validating the fact that sometimes it feels like we're alone in this. Sometimes it feels like nobody understands what we're going through, right? And that's true. You and I cannot go to every single one of our listeners and say, I know exactly what you're going through, right? Everybody's life is different. And everybody has different backgrounds and situations. But really just leaning in on your supports. It's okay to lean in on supports.
That's good.
And I want to encourage that.
We'll wrap with this, but what would you say to parents? When is it appropriate to bring a therapist into the equation? Like, what are some of the markers or some of the things? And I don't know if there's a universal answer to that, but like, I know some parents are like, is this therapy worthy, or are we just missing something? But what are some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I am somebody who would say, you never know what goes on in a kid's brain, because a lot of times they're very, they hide it. And I would just say, why not just take the first step and try it? And if my therapist tells me, this might not be very clinically significant, but I can give you some supports. Yeah. How to best it. But in my experience, right, most of the time parents will say, I don't even know if I should be here. And I'm like, well, you're in the right place, right? Because there's always something that you can work on. Yeah. No matter what walk of life your kid is in, I would honestly say if you are starting to question it, then maybe that's your sign.
Yeah. I love that answer. I'm grateful that you gave that answer. It's like, if you weren't sure if your kid fractured their ankle, you'd still go to the doctor to get an x-ray and see if there's anything wrong. Right. Right. And if there's something wrong, well, then we'll go through a protocol, put the cast on, do the thing. And if it's not, the doctor can go, hey, you know what? Smart move coming in, because you never know. But I think we're okay. Yeah. They're going to be good. But I do the same thing, and I love that answer. Like, it doesn't hurt. Right. If you feel like there are things going on, then it might be good to get a third perspective on, or another perspective on, depending. And I've never had a client come in and I've ever felt like, oh, this is ridiculous. Why in the world would they be here? I've never once in the thousands of clients I've seen ever thought that. But I have had clients who come in that they're only here for 2 or 3 sessions.
Yep.
And it's like, you know what? Thanks for coming in. Here's a couple things that I think if you guys implemented this, you guys are going to be good to go.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And so are there any resources or anything that you feel like would be beneficial?
Yes. So looking on, it's spelled, hold on, let me pull it up really quick.
Yeah, take your time.
The acronym is NAMI, so it stands for National Alliance on Mental Illness. There is a bunch of different tabs, but one of the tabs in particular is specifically for parents or caregivers, family members and caregivers. There might be support groups. There might be, it says being prepared for crisis, taking care of yourself. There's just so many really good things on here. And when I was chatting with my parents about how they really got through parenting my brother, this is the one thing that they said, like, they would recommend to everybody who's listening, because they felt finally like, we're not alone in this. We're heard. And there's amazing opportunities to even help other people, right? And that's healing in and of itself.
That's good. I will put that website below so that people can check that out.
Perfect.
Alexa, so proud of you and the therapist that you've been becoming and the work that you're doing. And we always get great feedback from, just the therapist that you've become, and super proud of you. And really grateful. I reached out to you, a month or 2 ago, and immediately you were like, oh, this is what I want to talk about. This is what I'm passionate about. And I'm like, this is such a good time for this. And we had just put out a podcast a couple weeks ago on a parent who has been parenting prodigals. And so I was excited to follow up with like a clinical perspective on parenting. So it's a really, really great timing. So grateful. Thank you for being with me.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all of that. And I really appreciate being here. And I hope that, this definitely helps anybody who just feels like, what could be next steps? Yeah, so thank you.
For sure. Thanks.
Well, parenting is hard, no question. But the more we are aware, communicate, resource ourselves, and know when therapy might be really helpful for the kids, the family, or even ourselves as a parent, the better off we might be. Thanks, Alexa, for sharing your insight on the podcast. I am grateful for the work she has been doing at Emerge and the difference she has made in so many people's lives already in her career. Well, thank you for listening. Please, if you could, take 1 second to rate this podcast. It really is helpful for us to keep the message getting out there. Well, until next time, or when our Savior comes, God bless. In a world where life can feel overwhelming, there's a place in the greater Northeast Ohio area where people find peace, hope, and healing. Emerge Counseling Ministries. For over 50 years, Emerge continues to be a trusted faith-based counseling center offering professional mental health care with a foundation in Christian values. Whether you're struggling with anxiety, depression, grief, or simply feeling stuck, our licensed counselors are here to walk alongside you. And the impact speaks for itself. 97% of our clients say they would recommend Emerge to a friend. 98% say they truly felt understood and heard by their counselor. And 84% report that their issue is improving through the care with us. At Emerge, you're not just a case number, you're a whole person. And we are here to support your journey towards healing and growth. It's confidential, compassionate, Christ-centered care. Learn more or schedule an appointment today at emerge.org. That's EMERGE.org. Remember, you don't have to walk alone.